And now, it's time to sit back and enjoy the Two True Freaks Internet Radio Broadcast.
Attention, people of Earth. Do not resist us. All who oppose us shall be annihilated. We command the most powerful army of monsters in the universe. They are sure to defeat your Earth monsters. All those who are hearing this are now under the control of the Earth Destruction Directive.
Hello everyone and welcome to Earth Destruction Directive. I am your host as always, Mr. Luke Giaconetti. I would like to thank everyone for downloading and listening to the show today. And we have a good show for you today. We are taking a look at another independent project, not a comic this time, but instead the second independent film from Shinpei Hayashiya. We are taking a look at the follow-up to Raiga, King of the Sea Monsters, which is Raiga, God of the Monsters. So, very eager to take a look at that one. I've had it in my collection for a while, but finally time to watch it and give some thoughts. But before we get into that, we do have some news to cover, so let's get right into it. Up first, Godzilla vs. Kong, a certified box office hit, opened domestically with $31.6 million. That is the biggest opening during the COVID-19 period. As of recording, its domestic draw is sitting right at $95 million, which is also the largest for domestic United States box office total during this period. Internationally, it drew about $332 million at the same time, so it is sitting above $427 million worldwide, which, this is the incredible part, that is more, during a pandemic, that is more than King of the Monsters earned worldwide, which was $386 million. So the box office mojo right now is showing that Godzilla vs. Kong, this is the highest of the series for international gross. And you're going to ask, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, we're not really sure what that means because we're not sure how much any of this is going to mean in the long run, other than this film has performed better than the previous film in the series, and during what was arguably one of the hardest times for films to be released to theaters. You know, I've seen a lot of think pieces on this, Godzilla vs. Kong hitting at the right time, as vaccines were starting to become more plentiful, people were more okay with going out into a theater, restrictions being loosened a little bit in a lot of areas, especially here in the States, and just the film itself being what people wanted to see, something escapist, something that took them away from reality for 2 hours. So, I mean, you know, and you can make arguments, well, the higher international gross means that the studio is making less money because a lot of that is how many cents on the dollar they're making per ticket sold in markets like the United States versus China. And all of that is very inside baseball stuff. The bottom line for me as a fan is that the film is succeeded at the box office. It did better than the film that came before it in a harder situation, and I'm very happy to see the film be financially successful. And I'm eager to watch it again, as I always am, and if you're eager to watch it again, it's not on HBO Max anymore, but Godzilla vs. Kong is coming to home media very soon. It is scheduled for a June 15th release. That's right before my birthday, so good timing there. Available right now, DVD, Blu-ray, 3D Blu-ray, 4K. You can find these pre-orders up at all the usual spots. I typically pre-order from Amazon. There's a list of different special features on the different versions. I went with the Blu-ray combo pack. That's where I'm at. I don't have a 4K system, so I go with the Blu-ray. That's what I have the other 3 films in the Monsterverse on. Now, also coming out on that day is a collection on Blu-ray of Kong Skull Island, King of the Monsters, and Godzilla vs. Kong. So if you've missed out on the last few, you can grab that set and do kind of a one-stop shop situation. Now, we have also seen pictures of a Monsterverse 4-pack of a set of all 4 of them on a Blu-ray combo. But I can't find this on Amazon. I did some digging around. I've seen that image a few places of the Warner Collection type label with the 4 films shown on the front. I cannot find that for pre-order right now. I know one of my friends was asking me if they were going to do a 4 set, and it would make sense to do a 4-pack of those films like that, but it's not on Amazon at the time of recording. I will keep my eye out and see if you can see that for anyone who maybe wants to just get, one slot on their movie shelf to have all 4 of the MonsterVerse films. But definitely eager to get this one on home media and eager to watch it again. Like I said, I watched it in the theater, watched it at home a couple of times on HBO Max, and it just brings a smile to my face just thinking about it. Now, maybe I'm just more prone, and that's okay. Shifting gears a little bit, the new Ultraman series has been revealed, and the title is Ultraman Trigger, and its secondary title is New Generation Tiga. Now, this series celebrates the 25th anniversary of Ultraman Tiga, which you may recall is the first series in the Heisei era of the Ultraman franchise, was dubbed in a very not so respectful way, and aired on Fox in the early 2000s. But this series, Ultraman Trigger, it debuts on TV Tokyo in July 10th. Now, unfortunately, it's unclear at this time if it will stream on YouTube like Ultraman Z has here in the West. I can say that I have read several articles saying that Ultraman Z being on YouTube has actually been a very big hit. This is what led to Tsuburaya re-releasing the show on YouTube, and in fact leaving the episodes up a bit longer, I believe, because my kids and I have been watching Ultraman Z on YouTube now, and we're following along week to week. Pretty much every Sunday morning we sit down to watch Ultraman Z before breakfast. I would very much like to see Trigger released this way. Obviously, from a selfish standpoint, it means that I can see it, and my kids can see it, and we don't have to, YouTube is a free service, obviously. Secondly, I just would like to see Tsuburaya continue to reach out to Western audiences like this. I have been purchasing every Mill Creek Ultraman series set that they have released. I look forward to continue to doing that, and I just really hope that this outreach continues and we continue to get more Ultraman and other Tsuburaya content here in the West, because I have very much enjoyed being able to get this stuff legally and in good quality too. That's the other thing, as we talk about Mill Creek. Well, they're very cheap. It's like, and they are cheap, but they think they put out a quality product, and I don't like to call them cheap. I just say they're budget friendly. Right, we got to be diplomatic about these things. So more information on that as we get closer to July. As I said, hopefully we'll be able to watch Trigger on YouTube. And meanwhile, I'm just enjoying the heck out of Ultraman Z. It's just a lot of fun, and starting to get a little deep about midway through the series here. I'm not going to lie. Maybe we'll talk about Ultraman Z sometime in the future. Now, in other streaming news, the anime Godzilla Singular Point debuts on Netflix globally June 24th, including here in the United States. Now, this series is getting a ton of buzz online, both positive and negative. So I guess in June, we'll all be able to make up our own minds on it. Some of the other Daikaiju fans that I chat with online have been watching it from where it's been airing in Japan and have various opinions. I've tried to kind of stay away from that. I want to go in as fresh as I can. It's been kind of hard to avoid some of the images and character designs for it because it's all over social media. I don't really know what to expect. I have to admit that I was the last anime based on a tokusatsu I watched was SSS.Gridman, and I really enjoyed that. And in fact, I probably need to start seeking out SSSS.Dynazenon, which is the follow-up to that. But that anime and monsters, sometimes it works better than others, sometimes I think, and I'm very eager to watch Singular Point and form my own opinions, and I hope everybody out there listening will watch and form their own opinions as well. So again, more on that once the series debuts on Netflix here in the States. And finally, one last item, a new art book. The Godzilla art of Yuji Kaida, which is the first English language art book from noted Daikaiju artist Yuji Kaida. It is coming out in October from Titan Books. It is a 128-page softcover, and is supposed to feature lots and lots and lots of his giant monster artwork. I'm sort of familiar with Yuji Kaida. I'm sure I know his art more so than his name. I'll readily admit artists and stuff like that is not necessarily one of my strong suits. the cliche is, I don't know art, but I know what I like. But from what I've seen of the previews of this book, it looks really, really good. I've got this pre-ordered. It's up on Amazon. So take a look at that, and this might be something to add to your Daikaiju library, something to, flip through and ogle over. Hat tip to my brother Jason, who passed this one along to me, and I do appreciate that, because always looking for more Daikaiju books for the shelf. If you have any news that you think would be of interest to the listeners here on Earth Destruction Directive, you can go ahead and send it in, earthdestructiondirective@yahoo.com. You can also tag me on Facebook or Twitter with that information, and I will be sure to give you credit here on the show. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to get into Raiga, God of the Monsters, right here on Earth Destruction Directive.
Hi, I'm Ruth.
And I'm Darren of the Rad Adventures Network.
We're a married couple who enjoy great stories of all kinds, including adventures, mysteries, science fiction, and fantasy.
Please join us for a variety of podcasts focused on a range of pop culture topics.
Trekker Talk is about 23rd century bounty hunter Mercy St. Clair from the comic Trekker by writer and artist Ron Randall. It's a blend of classic sci-fi adventures and noir mysteries set in a retro future.
Xenozoic Xenophiles is about the comic Xenozoic Tales by writer and artist Mark Schultz. It's a post-apocalyptic adventure series filled with Cadillacs and dinosaurs.
Warlord Worlds covers the many comics of writer and artist Mike Grell, including The Warlord, John Sable, Green Arrow, and the Legion of Superheroes.
Sensational Sleuths, where we talk about favorite mystery novels, movies, and TV shows.
Fantastic Fantasies, where we share our favorite fantasy films and books.
And Amazing Adventures, where we discuss action-packed adventure stories.
Listen on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Or visit radadventuresnetwork.com to find all of our shows and links to our social media pages.
That's RAD, R-A-D, which is short for Ruth and Darren.
Okay, we are back here on Earth Destruction Directive. Deep Sea Monster Raiga was released on home media in the US as Raiga, God of the Monsters, was released in Japanese theaters on August 15, 2009. Now, it did not get a US release until 2019, when SRS Cinema released it on special edition Blu-ray and VHS, as well as on a wide release on DVD. Our writer and director is Shinpei Hayashiya, best known for his fan film Gamera 4 Truth, as well as this film's predecessor, Raiga, King of the Sea Monsters, and you can flip back to Earth Destruction Directive episode 79 to hear about that one. Then the effects are done by Shoichi Kokumai. The only credits I could find for him were he was the director, writer, and special effects on the film Replicant Eve from 2014, which I am not familiar with. Hayashiya, is an independent filmmaker, so a lot of this is done, just with what they can pull together and that kind of stuff, so not a lot of major credits. So we're going to get into the synopsis. The synopsis has been adapted from Wikizilla, and our story goes a little something like this. A school of bonefish awakens the enormous sea monster Raiga. After he feeds on them, a giant devil bonefish confronts him, biting his throat. Raiga calls down lightning, killing his adversary and destroying a nearby tanker. Surviving bonefish then attack a fishing boat. In Tokyo, unlicensed street vendor Hajime Ito and his 3 daughters Matsuri, Hibari, and Akari discuss his late wife. He insists he's been faithful to her memory, but they are skeptical. Later that night, as Hajime and his friends walk home, they watch lightning strike a beer cafe. Meanwhile, at the Deep Sea Marine Life Research Center, a captured bonefish revives and kills a professor. That night, Raiga destroys a cargo ship in Tokyo Bay. At the Taito Defense Force Underground Headquarters, Commander Kido takes charge of the operation to destroy Raiga. As tanks would be held up by rush-hour traffic, he dispatches fighter jets as the first line of defense instead. Raiga makes landfall, sending the Ashai flame statue crashing down in front of Hajime and his friends. While the jet's cannons wound Raiga, his lightning shoots one down. They switch to missiles, indiscriminately firing them into the city. Nevertheless, enough managed to hit Raiga to force him to retreat. 2 months later, Hajime and his daughters are doing steady business selling unlicensed Raiga t-shirts. Later, bonefish leap out of the Sumiga River and attack 2 of Hajime's friends as they walk home. While discussing the killings, a Rakugo performer divulges that his father served on the Yamato during World War II when it battled another sea monster, Raiga. He notes that Raiga avoided destroying temples during his rampage. Raiga returns, derailing a train. Hajime is elated, seeing another money-making opportunity. Commander Kido plans to land the killing blow against Raiga with cluster bombs, though the politicians fear a public outcry. Tanks shell Raiga. He retaliates with a bolt of red energy from his hands. Hajime sends his daughters to a hotel, while he and his friends patrol Benten Shrine, though his daughters suspect he's more interested in Madame Masumi Benten instead of the shrine. An oversized tank named Kamikaze joins the fight, but Raiga destroys it after dodging its attacks. After taking shelter, Hajime blurts out Masumi's name while mourning the destruction of the city, earning his daughter's ire. The JSDF intensifies its attack on Raiga, toppling him with a stealth fighter dropping cluster bombs. Suddenly, a second Raiga appears, shooting down the bombs and every aircraft in the sky. Kido calls for an all-out attack no matter the casualties, but the politicians overrule him, optimistic that the 2 monsters will return to the sea. Instead, they do battle, devastating the Asakusa district with a beam lock. The newcomer is victorious and marks his territory before departing. Hajime, his daughters, and his friends survey the ruins of Azakasa the next day. The men conclude that the monster attacked to deliver a lesson about global warming, although the sisters are skeptical. They all resolve to hold a festival to honor the dead. Well, that was certainly different, wasn't it? I knew that Raiga was a comedy, but I honestly did not foresee it being this much of a comedy. And even beyond that, it is a very Japanese type of broad comedy, which is not common here in the West, and I think that leads to some of the awkwardness here. Let's get into the notes. Our film is set in Azukasa, a district of Tokyo, which is known for having the atmosphere of an older time period. It's best known for the Sensoji, a popular Buddhist temple. Azukasa now also used to be one of Tokyo's leading entertainment areas, but much of the district was actually destroyed during the war. But, today it still hosts attractions such as Rakugo theaters, which is the main connection here to Raiga. Rakugo is a form of Japanese verbal entertainment, known as yosei. Now, Rakugo is characterized by a single storyteller sitting on the stage, telling an involved, humorous tale, typically playing more than one character. And they do this either by a tilt of the head or a slight change of their voice. We see a little clip of a Rakuga in the film, and Hayashiya himself has also performed as one. Now, to me, this explains the entire film, as Raiga is essentially one long joke, seemingly a Daikaiju movie, but actually an attempt at a send-up of the genre with a punchline at the end, which is part of the format of the Rakugo traditional performance. Now, with this very Japanese type of comedy as a centerpiece, it becomes more of a challenge to translate for a Western audience, I think. Some of the comedy works. For instance, when Hajime and his friends are caught in the battle between the JSDF and Raiga, all of them bemoan that they will miss their favorite fast food rather than, their families. Similarly, Raiga dodging the hyper A-bombs that were fired by the big kamikaze tank, that legitimately made me laugh. Some of it, though, especially the interactions between Hajime and his daughters, it seems to have been lost in translation. There's some of it, they talk about one of the daughters wanting to be an idol, and he's making references, you could be an idol here, but not an idol there, and I think some of it's a little bit too local to really translate well. The final punchline, with the second Raiga marking his territory, literally bending over and peeing all over the place, to me was more of a "are you serious?" moment than anything else. We do get a couple of referential gags which made me smile as well. At one point, Hajime and his daughters are eating teppanyaki, which reminded me of a very similar scene in Gamera, Guardian of the Universe. Hayashiya, of course, being a big fan of the Heisei Gamera, I want to think that this is intentional, but I suppose it could just be a coincidence. But that's what it made me think of. Now, in this scene, on the wall, there is a Raigo poster, which is a nice touch. I always love seeing little touches like that. So obviously that story that the other performer was telling was popular enough that they made a movie out of it a few years earlier. Now later, when the couple is attacked by the bonefish, one of the woman's shoes is left behind as the only evidence. Now, of course, to me, this brings to mind the similar scene from Rodan in 1956 with the young couple that was going on their honeymoon, and we find her shoe as one of the pieces of evidence of Rodan. Now, the effects, those are kind of the main drawing point, I think, to a lot of Western Daikaiju fans that are picking this up. And the effects, kind of like the first one, they're not super polished, but considering the film's independent origins and budget, I think they look quite nice. The monster effects in general are well done. Raiga himself is well designed and executed. He's got a very similar sort of shape to Godzilla. He's that familiar type of bipedal reptilian monster, but there's enough different about him to make him unique, and he has some unique attacks with the calling down lightning and such, but he's well done. Similarly, the bonefish making their return from Raiga, they're well-designed puppets. I think that they worked good in the first movie, and they look pretty good here, again, considering the inherent challenges of doing a marionette type of monster, especially at that scale where it's interacting with humans. Now, the JSDF equipment, again, lacks polish, but it's certainly acceptable for the model shots, and there's a little bit of digital compositing there. The part that really leaves me cold, all told, of all the effects, are the CGI building destruction scenes. I understand the idea here. It's expensive to build models just to destroy them. It's cheaper to build models and then remove them and digitally replace them with a CGI destruction. It just doesn't do anything for me. One of the conceits a lot in especially Japanese science fiction is the idea of the arresting visual image, not necessarily something that looks realistic, but something that looks, engages the brain. And unfortunately, it just kind of takes me out of it when I see the CGI buildings being destroyed, as opposed to the other effects, which even when, they're not at the level that you would see in a Toho or Dai production, especially by this era, they still bring a smile to my face, and I still appreciate them. The buildings just doesn't really do it for me. Now, one of my favorite shots in the movie, it's a far shot of Raiga wading his way through the burning city. It's very nicely composed and composited, several different elements all coming together. And in that case, the CG works pretty well to do the large burning city, I guess because it's far enough away that we don't see a lot of the really fine detail in it, and it looks quite nice. Now, all told, Raiga is an interesting take on the Daikaiju genre, blending traditional effects with a very Japanese comedy style. Personally, I found the film amusing for the most part, even if I knew that some of it was going right over my head. But broad Japanese comedies is alright with me. Not every viewer will feel this way. I've watched enough Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, and even a little bit of Ultraman that plays on a broad type of Japanese comedy. So I'm a little bit more on board with it. I do know some viewers have really been turned off by this movie because of that, and that's okay. I can understand where they're coming from. Here in the U.S., the marketing for the film did not help. The serious title that it's applied to it, God of the Monsters, coupled with the cover art, it definitely gives the impression of a straight Daikaiju movie. I can see how getting a comedy instead would turn off viewers if they're getting this movie that they think is like I've seen people assume that this is an Asylum movie or something similar, that it's a mockbuster of, in this case, of Godzilla King of the Monsters, same as it was with Raiga. And that belies, of course, the actual origins of the film. But I can see if you're expecting that and instead getting this film, this very unusual Japanese comedy, that would definitely be a turnoff for you on that as a viewer if you're coming in cold. Bottom line, Raiga God of the Monsters, it's a film for Daikaiju enthusiasts. It's not really for general audiences or more casual fans. The special effects are well done for the budget. There's that term again. We always got to bring that up with independent films. And it looks pretty good. ... For the budget. And it does have some legitimately funny bits. As I said, it did amuse me when I was watching it. But I have to say that it definitely gave me a form of cinematic whiplash coming after Raiga, King of the Sea Monsters, which did have some attempts at comedy, but was actually more of a serious, straightforward story. So I'd keep that in mind. I mean, if you liked Raiga, I don't know, you may like Raiga, you may not. I think it's just go into it knowing it's a comedy and not a serious film, and I think you'll probably do okay. If you're listening to this show, you at least have some, I'm assuming, some interest in Japanese giant monsters. So if you check that out, just know that it's a comedy, and I think you'll be okay going in. So if you would like to own Raiga, now if you want to get that special edition Blu-ray or VHS, you got to buy that directly from SRS. So go their website, which is srscinema.com. SRS has been putting out a lot of these independent, low-budget tokusatsu films over the last few years. They put out Attack of the Giant Teacher. They just put out War of the God Monsters. They had the big release with Howl from Beyond the Fog. We talked about that here on the show a few months back. So go to their website. They still have those Blu-rays and Blu-rays and VHS tapes available. If you would prefer to get the regular edition DVD, that you can get at Amazon. So you can check any regular retailer and find that one. I know that they were in stock at Walmart for quite a while. I saw it at Walmart myself. I don't know if that's still the case. You know, their local stock will vary on that one. There also is a double feature DVD with both Raiga and Raiga on one set. I don't know if it's a double-sided disc. I'm assuming it's a double-sided disc, but if you missed Raiga, you can get both of them, and for the price of about getting it's. When I was looking at it, I think the DVD was $9.99 and the double feature was $19.99. So it's about the same price to get each of them, or just get one of them, whichever, works better for you. But hey, if this sounds like it's up your alley, check it out. It's that DVD was pretty easy to find for a while. I'm sure you could find it on Amazon. And then, of course, you could always get that special edition or the VHS. I do like that. I will, as an aside, I do like that SRS has been doing some stuff with VHS. I admit I have not pulled the trigger on any of those because I'm more of a vintage VHS guy. But, we always talk about like VHS horror, right? That was a big thing, VHS horror, and it still is, and legitimately so, because horror was a big genre on VHS. But, monsters had quite a lot of traction on VHS as well. I have a lot of classic Godzilla movies on VHS, and those classic VHS tapes that I had as a kid. And I really enjoy them. So I've looked at those SRS VHSs on more than one occasion and thought, So you never know. I might there might be one coming down the pike at some point that'll will break my my resolve, and we'll add one to the collection. But it hasn't done that yet. So have you folks? Let me throw the question out to you, the listener. Have you seen Raiga, God of the Monsters? What did you think? Did the comedy work for you? Did it not work for you? Were you disappointed, expecting a serious movie and getting a comedy? And what did you like, not like? I want to have a discussion about this because that to me is the fascinating parts of these movies like this, where it's atypical from, either a monster on the loose or a, battle of the monsters type of situation that we sometimes get pigeonholed into with these films, at least, from a broad standpoint. Obviously not, we genre fans know that that's not the real way the genre works. But comedy is a hard thing, and comedy doesn't always work for everyone. So if you've seen Raiga and have an opinion, I would love to hear from you. Earth Destruction Directive at yahoo.com. Send it in. We will talk about it here on the show. All right, that's about all I've got for Raiga. And we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to finish up the show here on Earth Destruction Directive.
It's a small world after all. It's a small world.
Great comics come in all shapes and sizes.
Coming soon from the Fire and Water Podcast Network.
It's Digest Cast, a new show dedicated to our beloved pocket-sized treasures from that bygone era of the 70s and 80s.
Hosted by the Fire and Water Podcast team of Rob and Shag, and we'll be joined from time to time by special guests.
It's Digest Cast, because big things come in small packaging.
Coming soon to the Fire and Water Podcast Network.
All right, we are back here on Earth Destruction Directive. And now it's time for a little bit of listener feedback. If you would like to get in touch with the show, you can email me at earthdestructiondirective@yahoo.com, and we will read your email and talk about it here on the show. We've got quite a lot of email in the email inbox because we've done all the episodes with my brother where we didn't get to do feedback. So we're gonna eat this elephant one bite at a time. Just gonna start at the beginning and work through them. And I promise we will get to each and every piece of feedback. So thank you for everyone who has submitted feedback, and please continue to do so. I really do appreciate it from every listener. So let's get to our first email. It is from longtime loyal listener Rich S. And Rich writes, "Hi Luke. I need to let you know that I've been really excited to give a listen to the many Earth Destruction Directive podcasts you have released lately. My favorite episodes are always the Showa kaiju films, Ultraman, and comic book ones, and you have not disappointed." Well, thank you very much, Rich. I appreciate that. Stay tuned to the end of the episode. I think you'll like our next one. "May I suggest a kaiju movie to review? Somewhere in my basement is a giant monster book I made while in kindergarten called Album of Monsters. Every several years, I still run across it when I straighten things out downstairs. Within its pages are the giant ants from Them, the Black Scorpion, Godzilla, Giant Condor, Rodan, and last but not least, the giant space chicken lizard bug monster Giala. Few monsters freaked out my developing brain more than the X from outer space creature. The thing just looked darn weird with its lasagna-covered arms and legs, bug eyes, and antenna. That, and he had some kind of suction cup thingy on his head. Long story short, recently I found the Blu-ray of the movie for sale online. I have the Criterion DVD from years ago, but just had to get the Blu-ray to see if it had the same English dub I remember from the VCR tape version. Well, it happens to be the same dub from the Criterion, but at least I have some lovely classic kaiju artwork to gaze at on the cover. Plus, the disc itself looks like a space spore. He cometh from foam, he returneth to foam. Looking forward to more podcasts in the near future. Loyal listener, Rich S. Rich, first off, thank you very much for emailing in. Secondly, the X from outer space, believe it or not, I've had another podcaster reach out to me and express interest in doing the X from outer space. It actually came in, this email came in a few months ago, and I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get to it, but in between you sending this email and now, when I'm recording this, I did have another podcaster reach out to me and express interest in covering the X from outer space. So I am happy to give breaking news that the X from outer space is penciled in to be covered this year on Earth Destruction Directive, probably in the fall, maybe into the winter time frame. But we will be getting to that. That is one that, I remember seeing a clip of it on some show somewhere when I was a kid, but I had never seen it. And it is a strange, strange movie. So I am excited to take a look at that and talk about it here on the show. So I'm glad you made that suggestion because that kind of planted the idea in my head. And then, as I said, this other podcaster reached out to me, and it's like, okay, well, that's two things. That's got to be a sign, right? So that means that we have to cover it if we have all these signs starting to point that way. So I appreciate it, and please look forward to that. And as I said, based on your feedback, I think you'll like what we're covering in our next episode as well. So very much appreciate it, Rich. Thank you very much for writing in, and please continue listening and sending in feedback because it is very much appreciated. Our next email is from my good friend, Mr. Adam Tebow, and it is entitled Godzilla 2014. And Adam writes, "Hey, Luke. I was just listening to you and Jay talk about Godzilla 2014, and I had a couple of random thoughts. Your comments about nuclear power plants reminded me of the new Superman and Lois series on the CW, which, as an aside, if you're not watching, that is a very good series. I've enjoyed that as I'm recording this. It's just come back from hiatus, and I'm excited to get back into that." Adam continues, "In the first episode, Superman saves a nuclear power plant from a, quote, Fukushima-level event. It made me think about how earlier shows would have used Chernobyl, or 3 Mile Island, as a disaster shorthand. I guess it goes to show how these rare disasters stick in the public consciousness like that." Absolutely. And I remember that reference because it does start at a nuclear power plant. And it's I like that scene. Again, I'm always a little partial, I guess, to the depiction of nuclear power given my background and the type of jobs that I've worked on. So I agree with you on that one. And now we do say that we say Fukushima because I guess it's such a it's more timely, right? And so that's it's more the updated reference. I don't know necessarily that like my kids' generation are just going to necessarily know outside of really know what Chernobyl or 3 Mile Island is, but they'll probably be more familiar with Fukushima just when they're learning it in school. Adam continues, my other thought was about the, quote, first Bryan Cranston experience discussion. While I, like Jay, automatically associate him with the dad on Malcolm in the Middle, my first experience with him was as an actor was actually in Babylon 5. He guest stars as a ranger who has to lead his ship on a suicide mission to convince the bad guys the false information his ship is carrying is genuine, to lead them into a trap. Now see, I've never watched Babylon 5. I know everybody's gasping, the pearls are being clutched. Hashtag clutch them pearls. But no, never seen Babylon 5, so I know it's got a high recommendation from you, from Andrew Lane, and a few others, but that's cool. I didn't realize he was on that show. That's just one more nerd thing I guess he's done there. Very neat. Adam continues, of course, I also heard him as the voices of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but I had no idea he was involved in that show until recently. Anyway, I hope you and the listeners enjoyed that little foray into my chaotic brain. Keep 'em stomping. Adam Tebow. Adam, thank you very much for writing in. And yeah, it's funny, we associate certain actors with certain things just because of how we're exposed to them, right? And when we first meet them. And we keep those connections even going forward. One that I always you talk about Bryan Cranston as a dad of Malcolm in the Middle. Rainn Wilson. A lot of people know him from The Office. Well, I never watched The Office. He's always, to me, Fishboy from House of a Thousand Corpses. And that's just because that's what I was introduced to him as, Or, there's all sorts of ridiculous examples like that. But that's neat that you think that made the connection between Babylon 5. I think that show's on HBO Max now, isn't it? I think you might have been telling me that. I may have to finally sit down and check that out, and I'm caught up on all the other stuff that I've said I'm supposed to catch up on, right? Well, Adam, thank you very much for writing in. Really appreciate it. Adam, of course, a very good and very dear friend of mine, IRL, but also it's funny because Adam is one of the most enthusiastic and knowledgeable tokusatsu fans that I know. But it's all relatively late coming. He was not so much a tokusatsu fan until myself and our mutual friend Joe, who you've heard over on Get Back to the Wrestling, we kind of put him on a little bit to some of this stuff, and it just kind of snowballed from there. So now I can always count on him for tokusatsu stuff like that. So thank you very much, Adam, for writing in, and I hope you continue to listen to the show. All right, our next email is from Richard Jordan, and Richard writes in, says, a new letter to the podcast. And Richard writes, I have been, quote, in the middle of your review of the 2014 Godzilla for a week now, and although that doesn't sound complimentary, I'm really enjoying it and squeezing it in 10-minute segments on my lunch breaks. I heard you comment at how you aren't a big fan of Cloverfield. I really enjoy hearing that podcast episode. I'd also love to hear what your thoughts about Rampage and maybe others. Stomp on, Richard. And yeah, I don't know that I'm going to particularly want to cover Cloverfield. I may have to at some point. I'm really, I don't know. Cloverfield has always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and so maybe I need to revisit it to readdress my biases, perhaps. And Rampage is on my watch list. My kids keep bugging me to watch it, and we haven't watched it because I haven't sat down with it, to be completely honest. And I like The Rock generally. I like the game. So I do want to watch it, and I think once I do watch that one with the family, we will cover that here on the show. So I look forward to that one, Richard, for sure. I think we will get to Rampage probably sooner rather than later. And we still have a few more. Let's do one more email. This is a fairly short episode, so we'll do one more, and then we'll call it a day for now, and then we'll pick up some more of these as we go forward. So our last email is from John the Engineer, the Enginerd. It's engineer and nerd all running together. And John's email is entitled King of the Monsters episode. So we're past Godzilla 2014. And John writes, Hey Luke, I just wanted to reach out and say thanks for the Road to Godzilla vs. Kong series. Kind of like Jason, these two titans of film are only on the perimeter of my normal viewing. I'm going to stop you right there, John. King Kong is not on the perimeter of Jay's normal viewing. I would say that my brother's one of the biggest King Kong fans I've ever met. And Kong, he's always been a Kong guy. There's just less Kong to consume than Godzilla. Jay is, a lot of people sometimes assume that with us being brothers that Jay and I are always into the same things, and we are often. And we both do love monsters, but Japanese giant monsters has always been my thing. But that's not to say that my brother doesn't like giant monsters, or to say that my brother is not a King Kong fan. Because my brother, again, being a New York guy and all that, King Kong has always held a big spot for my brother. So just want to put that out there so everybody's on the same page. But John continues, I should say, these two titans of film are only on the perimeter of my normal viewing. So it was nice to be able to see, excuse me, let me try that again. So it was nice to be able to wade into the fray with your show. Since you were covering these, I've watched Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla Raids Again, Yongari, and Destroy All Monsters. It's been a fun ride, and realize I don't remember these as well as I thought I did from when I was a kid. That's true. Your mind remembers certain aspects of them, and Jay talks about this a lot over on the Vault or on the Bots, Bugs, and Babes. Sometimes we misremember, right? Air quotes up to the mic, misremember. We conflate different movies together because maybe we watched them close to each other and we don't quite remember them exactly. I'm as guilty of that as anybody. But yeah, it is fun to revisit those things sometimes and say, wow, I didn't remember that at all. As you were describing the base, I'm guessing he means Castle Bravo, I was thinking about the similarities to the base in Destroy All Monsters, and that's true. There's a really nice HQ in Destroy All Monsters, isn't there? Always count on some Japanese science fiction for an HQ. I always love a good HQ. That's one of my things. I guess growing up in the 80s with like Castle Grayskull and the Terrordrome and stuff like that, bases, headquarters, right? That's always a cool thing for me. John continues, the other thing that struck me was the analogy to wrestling that Jason used. I only know wrestling from collateral sources. I've never really watched wrestling. I blame a brutal 6-week experience with wrestling in junior high gym class. Anyway, I saw a similar analogy with tokusatsu and some anime shows. As Derek and Mike at Fanholes often point out, shout out to the Fanholes, the hero often has a bad turn with the big bad before somehow receiving a power-up for round 2 power. Kamen Rider, for example, typically goes through a couple of forms before his final henshin in the last battle. The flow of King of Monsters and the general outline you described really reminded me of a Toku film. Thanks for the great series, John. Well, John, first off, thank you very much for your kind words and for writing in. I am glad that my brother and I were able to do the Road to Godzilla vs. Kong because there was some tight times on the schedule to get all those done and out and recorded, especially since they ended up being quite lengthy. But I'm glad you appreciated it. I've been getting generally positive feedback about that series, and a lot of that I think goes to my brother too. So a big shout out to my brother Jason for all he does for the show that you guys never really know about, all the the discussions and behind the scenes stuff. But to get back to your point here, it's true. It's the same type of approach. Wrestling and any other type of longer form storytelling uses a lot of these tropes, and we see it here in these films where it's a series of films building up to it, right? But your connection to, like, say, Kamen Rider or the Super Sentai or an anime show is valid as well. Now, part of this is commercial, right? Part of this is on the tokusatsu side is to sell toys, right? If we give Kamen Rider several forms, then we can sell several toys to the kids, right? Or kids, air quotes up to the mic, kids, because, we get those adult collectors too, right? So you can sell, to sell toys, right? That's part of it. But part of it also is that it's, like Eric Bischoff always talks about, it was Sarsa, right? So we have to have, story and action, reality, surprise, and anticipation. Right? So if we have surprise when the big bad is able to lay the hero low, the hero that's been able to overcome all these threats so far, we have surprise, and now we have anticipation. What's going to happen? How's he going to come back? And then we can get, surprise again when he gets a new form or some new power up. And it builds that anticipation week to week. And so when you have any type of long form story like that, you lean on these storytelling tropes. And, and Bischoff will be the first one to tell you that he didn't invent this. He just this is just the way he codified it in his mind when he was forced to do it. And, I say it all the time over on Get Back to the Wrestling. It's not rocket science. It's pro wrestling. Storytelling like this where you have two forces fighting this is the way you do it, and you have to build up to it, and you've got to make sure that your antagonist seems completely unbeatable, so that when the hero finally does beat him, it's that cathartic release from the audience, that they are so invested in seeing their hero overcome the villain that when he finally does it, they feel this euphoric sense come over them. And Godzilla vs. Kong is being a very special case when you got two popular guys. There's not a clear-cut hero and villain here. It's two, as we would say in wrestling, two baby faces. So I appreciate that you liked that, and I'm glad that Jay and I were both, again, mostly my brother, were able to really express and convey that, because I think that kind of approach to the storytelling really informed what they were doing with Godzilla vs. Kong, and for me personally, it helped with my appreciation and enjoyment of the film. So thank you very much, John, for writing in, and I hope you continue to enjoy the show, and hope to hear from you again in the future. Now, I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got at least 4 emails that I can see. Some of these, Yahoo's kind of bunching some of them together at the moment. So we will get to more of those next time. And as I said, I really appreciate everybody writing in and all the feedback. We've gotten some great feedback on social media. Way too many names to list on the last 4 episodes. So I'm just going to put a blanket statement. If you liked and retweeted or shared the show on Facebook and Twitter, I really appreciate that. I really do, because that really helps get the word out. And I love seeing that stuff. And, they say one of the best ways to get your show out there and get any of your creative endeavors out there is word of mouth. And that's like word of mouth nowadays, right? Is you guys and gals out there, spreading the word of Earth Destruction Directive on social media, and I really, really appreciate that. Furthermore, I would like to say, and I've had a few people mention this to me either through DMs or in group chats and stuff, that once again, I'd like to let everybody know that Earth Destruction Directive is for everybody. If you are, if some part of the Daikaiju genre, the Daikaiju scene, if you will, brings you joy, then you're welcome to be a part of this show and discuss and engage with me and the rest of the listeners, and that all are welcome here on Earth Destruction Directive. I think we have seen, in this fandom, we've seen some lows, some really low lows, and we've seen some pretty high highs too, to be completely honest with you. I've seen some things coming out of the release of Godzilla vs. Kong, some not necessarily every interaction, but I've seen some really positive fan interactions and fans, really just showing their love and appreciation for this genre and engaging with others. And I hope that I can see that trend continue. I've been accused of being too positive, and I'll eat that. I will take that on the chin every time. If I am too positive about things, well, then maybe it's because the rest of the world is being too negative. And this is something that I love and really, care for. And it's a part of me, this fandom of giant monsters. And if that means I can celebrate it and be positive about it and speak kindly about others about it, then so be it, and I'll take that one every day. So if you want to be part of Earth Destruction Directive, you are welcome to interact with us however you feel comfortable. Now, always we have to ask the question, what is next? And I made the point that, Rich said that he really liked the Showa Godzilla, and he really liked Ultraman, really liked comic books. So what do we have coming up on the next episode? Well, next time we are going back to the Showa era, but we're going to the Showa era of Ultraman. That's right, we are back in the original 1966 run of Ultraman for the next 2 episodes, episodes 26 and 27. But not just any 2 episodes, dear listener. Oh no. Episodes 26 and 27 are a 2-parter. It is the Prince of Monsters, parts 1 and 2, introducing the longtime fan favorite monster, Gomera. I am very much looking forward to this. I knew I would have to probably have to do a 1-part episode in order to make sure this lined up, and then it worked out that My Home is Earth came before the Prince of Monsters, so I could do My Home is Earth as a standalone episode, and that way get on where we have the even episode first and the odd episode second. So that's going to be Prince of Monsters is going to be talking about our topic of discussion, I should say, on our next episode. Of course, we'll have news, and we'll have your feedback and anything else that we can cram on into the episode. Thank you, everyone, for downloading and listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, taking a look at Raiga, God of the Monsters, and I hope everybody comes back for 2 more episodes of Ultraman, introducing Gomera. Everybody loves Gomera. He's a popular dude. Heck, he was a star of a series, essentially, right? Ultra Galaxy Mega Monster Battle. I mean, Gomera was the top guy. So, anyway, that's all I've got, folks. Please send in your email, earthdestructiondirective@yahoo.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. Just listen to the outro to the show. Thank you again for downloading and listening. Please come back next time for Ultraman featuring Gomera. And until then, keep 'em stomping. This has been Earth Destruction Directive, a Daikaiju podcast, produced and created by me, Luke Giaconetti, as part of the Two True Freaks Internet Radio Network, available at twotruefreaks.com. This is a fan work celebrating the history and culture of Japanese giant monsters. All movies, TV shows, comic books, characters, and other intellectual property is copyright their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended or implied. If you would like to send an email to the show, you can email me at earthdestructiondirective@yahoo.com. I try to respond to all emails, and if you send in some comments, I will read them on the show. All episodes of Earth Destruction Directive can be found at twotruefreaks.com. You can also find the show on your favorite podcatcher. Just search for Earth Destruction Directive. You can even leave a review on your podcatcher of choice if you'd like. You can find me on Facebook. Just search for first name Luke, last name EDD. You can also get in touch with me on Twitter. Just search for the handle @LJacone. That's LJACONE. The theme song for this podcast is Future Gladiator by Kevin MacLeod, downloaded from Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Thanks for listening, and be sure to come back next time for more city-stomping fun here on Earth Destruction Directive. Tune in next time to hear the crusty old podcaster from Oklahoma say,
There's a WTF moment if I ever saw one.